illness. Then we have things that will trigger this mental illness. So that is where all our stresses fall in. Gani ndio watu wako nayo sahi? Exams, if you fail exams, yeah. If the boyfriend or the girlfriend akifanya ile kitu, yeah. All those ones, they fall now there under psychosocial issues and triggers that will cause mental illness. So they're not the cause of mental illness, but they can trigger mental illness in you. Sometimes bullying, when you talk to high school students, that one comes out well. Then there's the issue of abuse that we don't take for granted. It actually causes mental illness in future, be it physical, sexual, whichever form of abuse can lead to mental issues. Family conflicts, they're those ones who've grown from homes where there's always dysfunctional, there's always violence, so much so they have a higher risk of developing mental challenges in future. Yeah. If parents have this parental divorce, it affects their children. And nowadays we are having this one, high social media expectations, becoming a cause of stress and depression among the young people. So that you're putting your standards to be the standards on social media, which are not actually the true standards, and it causes a lot of issues. Then there's also the issue of grief and death that can be a trigger to mental illness. So there are many mental disorders. I'm not going to go through all of them. Kwanza hii ningewauliza. I'd already shown you, so I know you know the answers there. Depression, bipolar, I'm going to talk about a few of those ones. So starting with the first one, what do you know about depression? What have you heard about depression? It's the first one we're going to go through. Anything about depression? Watu wana mumble. Ama niseme tu? Tumalize haraka? Astaki kumaliza haraka. Yeah? Okay. It's a term that we loosely use nowadays. We use it loosely, but it has a specific meaning. When someone talks about depression, the prevalence of depression, especially in Kenya, it's around 20%. 20% to make it easier, it's the 1 in 5 I was saying. So kawale student government wameka hapo wameja 5, moja wao. Yeah? So that's the prevalence. Then the things you see in depression, someone will have a low mood that is persistent for a period of 2 weeks. Yeah? So it doesn't mean that the day you are sad, then you have depression. No, this low mood is persistent for 2 weeks, despite anything. Whether you have something good happening, your low mood is not able to neither be increased as a way of coping with the stress they are going through, or it can be decreased. They see no interest in the food. The same case to sleep. They can either be oversleeping because it's their way of running away from their pain, emotional pain, or they are not sleeping at all because of the many thoughts that they have with them. Then concentration is also a challenge. Someone who used to perform very well, but they're no longer able to even concentrate in class or perform in class. Then there's the issue about guilt. They feel like they're the ones responsible for all the wrong in the world. Whatever goes wrong, they're taking the blame on them. So it becomes a lot of emotional pain to bear, and that is where depression comes in. So at the bottom of that list, you have suicidal ideations. And sometimes you can find people actually committing suicide. Sawa sawa. But we're not saying all cases of suicide have depression. I want to bring that disclaimer at the start. But those ones who are depressed are likely to think about suicide and attempt suicide. That is number one. Number two, I'm moving to the next disorder, which is substance use. It's very rampant in these age groups. And a study done in Kenya talked about 84% of youth aged between 16 to 24 years using substances, having a history of even testing substances. Ilikuwa inakuja 84. Now we are reversing whatever we were saying. We're talking about 1 in 5. Now we are talking about 4 in 5 have tested substances, either alcohol, miraa, cigarette, or whatever it is. Yeah? Iyo ni ya huko nje, ama it is also part of us here. Ni ya huko nje. I knew you'll go with that one. So the other drugs include cannabis, cocaine. Someone asked that when you start substances, why is it so hard to stop? It's because it affects your mental functioning. It affects some systems in the brain. There's the reward and motivation system in the brain, where if you perform well in an exam, so there's that good feeling that you get. So the substances are able to give you this good feeling. But the problem of this good feeling from substances, it's very short-lived. So after the good feeling comes a very low feeling. So you come from going high and you're down. and then it becomes a problem because this down is lower than the normal down. So if your life becomes a feeling of down, down, down all the time, you're tempted to go back to the substances that gave you a high. So initially, people who use substances, they start using the substances to be able to feel good. That's impulsive use. But later on, now they use the substances to get away from the bad substances now for the feel-good effects. They're using the substances in a compulsive kind of way. If you don't use, you have the withdrawal symptoms. Semeziona, for alcohol, they'll be shaking, they'll even be having headaches, all that kind of thing. So now they use the substances to avoid that withdrawal. The things that we see commonly with substance use, people tend to spend more time on the substances, and for that reason, you start having a declining school performance, you have school dropout, and most times you are isolating from other people because you're hiding to use the substances. Then you have mood changes. You'll find someone who was able to tolerate people, but suddenly they're very irritable. You try talking to them, kitu kidogo, and they're very irritable. So those are some of the things that you'll see. For the older people, they start now having violence in the family because money is a challenge. The low feeling is so high, so they tend to become very violent. And on that slide also, they are more predisposed now to the disorders we are talking about, psychosis and bipolar. Tuko sawa bakapo? Then, because the presentation wanted us to really look at the physical effects, I'll also have a slide on that, medical effects of substance use. These are people who easily engage in sexual behavior, risky behavior at that, so there's no protection. So they'll tend to have HIV, they'll tend to have STDs. Then their risk of committing suicide is high. And I've already explained why. Because you're feeling depressed most of the time. You're feeling low most of the time. So you're losing hope most of the time. Because there's nothing good, your tendency of saying, Sasa, there's nothing interesting in this life, let me just die, is high. So they have a higher tendency to commit suicide. Then the other physical things that happen, they have a higher risk of having hepatitis B, hepatitis C, especially those ones who use IV drugs. Then the systems, if you look at the body systems, the liver will be affected, they'll have liver failure. If you're looking at the respiratory system, they are at higher risk of diseases like TB, lung cancer, at higher risk. If you're looking at the CNS, the central nervous system, their concentration is very low, they have a higher risk of stroke, they also have a higher risk of having epilepsy. Epilepsy ni kifafa. Yeah, so it increases their risk. Actually, there are those people who have kifafa on withdrawal. Wamezoea kunywa this quantity. If they don't take that quantity, they have epilepsy. Yeah, so that's some of the effects that they have. Then cardiovascular diseases like hypertension, diabetes, they are also at higher risk of these diseases. Then this slide is just telling us the myths about substance use. When people start substances, they think that it is voluntary. I'm going to use this and then stop at some point. But it becomes hard to stop because I've told you it starts as you're using for the good feeling, but later on you're using to avoid the bad things. So it's no longer in your control by the time you become addicted. So it stops being a voluntary behavior. And sometimes judgment is passed on those people thinking, siawache tu kunywa pombe. But it stops being in their control to just stop, whatever the substance that you're talking about. Then there are those ones who look at addiction and say it's a character flaw or it's a moral flaw, especially the religious people, they tend to judge. But once you've started the substances, it's out of your control. Then these are people that can benefit from treatment, and treatment actually works. I'm moving on to the next one, which is suicide. And I've already given a disclaimer about suicide. It's not... People who attempt suicide are not all mentally ill. True? On the day that you are starting this mental health awareness, last Sunday, we had a worldwide suicide prevention day. It was a World Suicide Prevention Day. And we were having a walk also about suicide. And we talked a few things about suicide. And it's, by definition, is the self-directed, injurious behavior with an intent to die. But for every one person that dies by suicide, there are 40 to 50 others that attempted suicide and they did not die. So it becomes a very big problem. Then we say that there's one death in every 40 seconds. Nimeongea hapa for how long? So you can multiply that by 40 seconds. So that's the number of people that have died while I'm just here, died by suicide. So if you look at it like that, it becomes a very big problem. Worldwide, the statistics are actually increasing. It used to be 800,000 deaths per year, but now it's going up to 1 million. And it's a leading cause of death in this age group, 15 to 29, which forms the 3/4 of the people in this room. So that's why we have to talk about this. Then people just don't wake up and commit suicide. It starts with the thought, the ideation. What will happen if I die? Will I be less of a burden if I die? Especially if you have conflicts at home. Then you think, if I'm to die, which method will I use? So you are progressing in that thought process. Then you tell yourself, kutumia kamba ni uchungu sana. Kutumia, which is the other option? Rat and rat. I'm a deep, so you go for those ones, yeah? So you weigh your options, and you see if someone could intervene at the point this person is thinking of, I am a burden, then they'll be able to be saved. But then for someone to intervene, we have to make it okay for people to talk about their mental issues, for people to say, at the point I've reached, I'm actually feeling like I have suicidal thoughts. I'm feeling like my life is not worth it. So if we are open to each other and we are able to talk like that, then we can prevent many deaths by suicide. So suicide is not a sign of weakness. And when people talk about, I am thinking of killing myself, it should not be taken lightly. It's something that someone begins as a talk and they end up making an action out of it and dying by suicide. The statistics of suicide say that women attempt suicide more than men, 3 times more actually. Ama niseme ladies? Okay, women attempt suicide 3 times more than men. But the men, they die by suicide 3 times more. So tunafaa kuweka emphasis kwa wagani? Kwa wote, wacheni uongo. So all of them, because even the ones who try and they don't die by suicide, they are at higher risk of trying again. And if you try several times, you're eventually going to die by suicide. So I'm moving to the next disorder, which is anxiety disorder. This is a common one in this age bracket. I'll focus on 2, not all of them. One is the generalized anxiety disorder, then the social anxiety disorder. And we also have phobias in this category, but I'm not going to talk about the phobias today. So normally, this is the reaction that happens. If there's danger, your mind senses that there is danger, then you have 2 or 3 options. One is to freeze when there's danger. You are not able to do anything. In as much as you're meant to be running away, you don't do anything. So those are the 3 responses to danger. And they'll be affecting your heart. You'll be having a fast heart rate, alertness. Adrenaline rush is actually very high. So that's the normal response to signaling. But what happens in anxiety? The same response comes, but there is no danger. Yeah? So like you're meant to stand here. Nikisimama hapa hivi mtanikula. But now the mind responds that this is a very great danger. And this is the response that comes to the person. So that is the theory around how anxiety develops. That you're having the reaction that you should have when there's danger, but this time there is no danger. So, and some of these people actually develop a panic attack. And this is how they feel during the panic attack. You're thinking like, something bad is going to happen, and you're even thinking that you might actually die with this bad thing, and you feel like you're having a heart attack, but it's mostly a panic attack. And then all those things I've listed there happen to the person. Their heart is pounding, they're sweating, they're trembling, there's chest pain, you feel like you have nausea, your hands are wet, or you are numb. So that is a panic attack, and it happens to some people who have anxiety. But I said I'll focus on these 2. One is a generalized anxiety disorder. This is where a person is always afraid, even when the situation does not warrant you to be afraid. So they have excessive and uncontrollable worry about the normal things of life. Yeah? You are meant to come from the classes to this hall, but it's already giving you anxiety. Is that something that should stress you? Yeah? You're meant to go for a class, but it's stressing you. Where will I be seated in that class? Will I even find a seat? And it's giving you a major panic attack just coming to a class. Then that becomes a problem. And you get all those symptoms I've listed there. Restlessness, you feel fatigued because your body is always on an adrenaline rush. You have difficulty concentrating, you're irritable. So the same thing happens also in social anxiety disorder, but this one now is particular. It happens if you're going to a setting that has many people. Then you have the social anxiety disorder. I want to quickly move on. Bipolar disorder. We've talked about depression. Bipolar means two poles. No. Two. No. So it has two poles. The downside is the depression. The upside is the manic episode. So these are the typical people we see, and then we call them mad people, yeah? But we forget that mental health is a spectrum. Sindio? Because that is when you're stressed, na umeamka na mguu ya left, and you're very irritable, you're also not mentally well, yeah? But the ones we consider mentally unhealthy ni hao wenye wako kwa this spectrum. So in this bipolar mood disorder, on the higher spectrum, we have the manic episode. These are people who will be having high energy levels. They are very happy or very irritable. Those are the two moods that they have. Then they are very quick in their spending. They easily spend because they don't see any harm. They feel invisible. That's the word, yeah? So they have a lot of energy. They have decreased sleep and decreased need of sleep. So mtu asikuja niulize ati mimi I sleep for 3 hours, I have bipolar. Hapana. This one sleep for 3 hours, but then the rest of the day, they are active. So they can sleep for 3 hours, wake up and go to the shamba at 2 a.m. Is that okay? Is that a normal thing? Yeah, but now for them it's normal. They have energy, they have many things to achieve, and they do them at that wrong time. And these are the people who are most likely to engage in things like betting, things like they can actually bet even their homes, and suddenly someone has lost a home. They're even good at gambling. So this is in the bipolar mood disorder. Then I think this is, I'm going to do one more. The psychotic disorder. These ones now have a fixed belief in something that is not real. So they have different perception of reality. Their reality and our reality is different. They can be hearing voices talk to them. And of course, they are hearing the voices. You can't tell them they're not hearing the voices because they are. Yeah? Or they can be seeing things that you don't see. So you'll find them talking to people and you're wondering, anaongea na nani? But they're talking to people that they can't see. Sometimes it may be the people you know, some other times it's people you don't even know. Or they can even be talking to people who died a while ago and they're actually having a conversation. So this one is their psychosis. Then they can have disorganized thinking and behavior. You try talking to them and you don't understand how did they leave topic 1 and go to topic 2 and another topic, yeah? Then the common thing we see about them is the neglect of hygiene. And it's a disorder that is commonly diagnosed at the age of 15 to 25 years. That is where we fall. The last one I'm going to mention is this post-traumatic stress disorder. And this one happens when you face some major challenges, some major issues, traumatic events. And there's a normal reaction to the events that can last around 4 to 6 weeks, assuming you are witness to a major accident where people died and maybe 2 survived and you're one of the survivors. Will that end? You'll keep thinking about that? Is it something that will end there and then? You'll keep thinking about that, yeah? So there's a normal stress reaction that will last for 4 to 6 weeks and then stop. But now for the PTSD, they have this, they'll keep thinking about that even many years later. So their response to that traumatic experience is more than the usual normal stress. We get the difference? Tumelewa? I can see nods. Yeah. So, and then apart from having those reactions that we're going to list, it also affects their social and occupational functioning. They're not able to go to work. They're not able to sleep. They're not able to interact with others because every time they think whatever happened is going to happen again. So accident is one example. The other example is like terror attack. Kama ile Westgate, or there was another one in, which place was this? West Pokot, where? Muna mumble. I can't hear when you mumble. Where was that one? Yeah, in the western parts of the country. So all those things, terror attacks can cause you a PTSD. The other things that we see that can cause PTSD is abuse, sexual abuse being on top of that list. Rape is also another one. Murder, if you experience murder or you witness, the word is witness murder, then you're going to have this PTSD. So which are the symptoms that you'll have in PTSD? The common one is flashback. Wherever you are, you feel like you are reliving the experience over and over again, that it is happening. And every time you're reliving it, it's fresh again in your mind. That's flashback number 1. Then number 2, it's avoidance. If it was a car accident, now you tend to avoid even using a car. If it happened in a certain mall in town, you tend to avoid even going to malls, yeah? So that's avoidance. Then number 3 is being easily startled. We call it hypervigilance. Even if a pen drops next to you, you panic. Na unastuka kabisa because now you think something worse is going to happen. Then there is hyperarousal. It means you're not able to rest at all. Sleep becomes a challenge. You're always in a panic mode, and all that becomes under PTSD. So these are the mental health issues we are talking about. We keep seeing them on newspapers. I'm seeing one there talking about depression among the youth. The other one there talking about teachers being the cause of drug abuse, a death by suicide by a student, anxiety. You're able to see all those? Yeah. So those are the common things that the current issues that we see necessitating us to have such talks about mental awareness. I'm not going to go to the details of treatment, but let's know that treatment is available. We can either use medication, we can use talk therapy, and we also use social support as one form of the medication. Any questions to that extent? The second part of the presentation is brief, because now after all those problems, we're going to tell ourselves, how do we cope? It's not good to leave people with problems. It's good to tell them how they're going to manage the problem. So that's the next part that is going to be short. Any questions? Ama we handle them at the end? Okay, I'm seeing one here. We can tackle that, and then we'll handle the rest at the end of the presentation.
Good morning to you all. Good morning. My question goes to how we can handle the patients who are suffering from mental illness, or being that there are patients whom we've discovered that they are given medication, and still the medication distorts their minds more than the way they were before. And later they say, the doctors say that we change to this until the patient dies instead of getting help because of the medications. How can you help us? Because many people fear those medications, like Modicate. It has also some other side effects, bad side effects, like it brings goiter, it brings some things like other disorders. Maybe you can even get other diseases that you didn't have before, and even with kidney failure. So can you?
Effects, yeah? So most of the medications have side effects. So what we normally do for patients, we try to tailor-make, like customize the medication for that particular patient. But it's not often that patient A will come and you know that drug A is the one that is best suited for this patient. So you'll find that from the team, we'll keep changing medication until we find what works for that one patient, yeah? So normally we ask them to be patient with us. They are called patients, so they are meant to have patience. But anyway, we ask them to be patient with us as we try and get what medication is best suited for them. You've mentioned an example of Modicate, and sometimes when we give Modicate, we actually give a counter drug to prevent the side effects, but we don't do it routinely because there are some patients who can get the same Modicate and not have the side effects, even up to maximum doses of the same, while there are others who will get a very small dose and have the side effects. So the take-home point is we encourage patients to work with us, yeah? And from our team nowadays, we are trying to change the medication a bit fast. If it's not working for the patient and it has side effects, we try to listen to the patient so that we are not insisting that this is the best medication, use it. No, we are agreeing that some medication may not benefit some patients, yeah? You have a follow-up question?
Now, hello? Okay, now with the side effects after they have already occurred, how do you handle them? Or can it just be left like that so that it may harm the patient, or there's a way it can be handled, the side effects?
The side effects, yeah? But now the patient has to come to us so that we give the medications that can counter. The problem comes when the patients go and experience side effects, then they opt to stop the drugs. Their mental illness will come back. Yeah? So we have medications that will counter the side effects, and then we move to some other medication. But we can talk on the side after this. Sawa sawa. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'll talk about coping mechanisms, taking care of your own mental wellness. If anybody still has a question, we will answer after my presentation. Ni sawa? So let's keep our questions. I'm Dr. Angeline Tenge. I'm a resident doing psychiatry at Moi University, MTRH. So I'm also part of this IAM team. So this, we'll first look at stress versus mental illness. And we say somebody has stress when the demands exceed personal and social resources that the individual is able to mobilize. So stress is like applied pressure. And then there is the strain where you are stretching, you're trying to cope, there's resilience. And if you remember our physics, there's something called Hooke's law. And when you're talking about stress, you're applying pressure. So stress is directly proportional to the strain up to an elastic limit. So there's the way our body can handle stress. And if the stress continues building up, it gets to a point whereby you break. So when stress increases beyond elastic limit, it results in a breakage. And positive and negative events can cause stress. So you'll find that sometimes somebody will end up with a lot of stress to an elastic limit where they actually break down. A good number might end up with some sort of mental illness. Somebody will end up with psychosis, other people depression, others will end up with bipolar because of the stress has become too much. So I'll talk about coping with stress. And coping is an attempt to manage the stressful demands. And usually coping can be adaptive, useful, or maladaptive, which is unuseful. So for example, you'll find somebody has stress and they decide, let me drink to help me calm up. That will end up with, and you continue drinking, so you end up with a maladaptive way of coping. And somebody will have stress and decide, let me look for the school chaplain or my friends to talk about it. That ends, you end up with an adaptive way, a useful way of coping with the stress. So some of the ways we can cope with stress, there's self-awareness. It's very important to know yourself, know what you like, know where you come from, know where your limits are, so that you're able to handle life situations. So knowing what you're feeling at any given time and why. I've done an exam, it didn't go very well for me. I'll end up feeling sad. Understand the links between emotions, thoughts, and actions. So sometimes when your emotions can actually influence how you think, and you'll actually end up influencing your actions. I'm feeling very bad. I'm thinking maybe if I smoke a joint of bang, I'll feel better. And then you end up smoking. So you really need to understand that, and then have personal values, know what is good for you, know what your limits are, and self-awareness is vital for your interaction as well as your personal health. So self-awareness. And then there's something called assertiveness. Assertiveness is learning to say no effectively. So saying no to negative peer pressure, saying no to avoid being taken advantage of, setting healthy boundaries, decisive time management, and saying no to time wasters, and confidently taking up responsibilities and doing them to the best of your ability. So part of the methods we can use to cope with stress is being assertive. So you need to know when to say no. If you have a group of friends, you're doing something, like for example, you're planning to probably smuggle in liquor in this university, you need to know where your boundaries are. Sindio? You just don't do things because other people are doing things and these are my friends. Sawa. So that is assertiveness. And then there's self-care. So part of self-care is you start simple. Eat a well-balanced diet, exercise on a regular basis. When you exercise, when you eat well, there are these hormones called endorphins. They are called feel-good hormones that are actually released in the body. So you'll actually end up feeling okay. You need to sleep well, sleep enough, 6 to 8 hours in a day, and then take brief rest periods during the day to relax. It's okay to take a break even before you get overwhelmed. Sometimes when you feel you're overwhelmed, it's okay to take a break. Appreciate yourself. You've done a test. The last time you had a 40%, this time you've gotten a 50%. You appreciate yourself. That's an improvement. You've been able to complete your assignments or tasks on time. Appreciate yourself. And then avoid use of caffeine or other stimulants. And then you find healthy and fulfilling activities. Engage in the hobbies you like, the sports you like, creative outlets, volunteering. Is it singing? Is it running? So engage in activities that are fulfilling and you enjoy. And then there's something called social support. So it's very important to surround yourself with supportive and positive influences. So we all need someone to lean on. We have, most of the time you find you have few but trusted friends. So look for people you can actually trust, people you can lean on, and those people who allow you to be you. Those people who don't expect you to change so that you can fit into their social circles, and the people who actually give you positive energy. Also, it's very important to develop meaningful relationships. And as you do this, you need to avoid over-relying on other people so that you don't lose your individuality. It's okay to have friends, have healthy boundaries. Don't over-depend on them until you lose yourself as a person. And then there's something called problem solving. Normally, when you have a problem, you need to identify the problem, try to fully understand the problem, decide to tackle the issues like you commit to tackle it, and then you look at all the options that are available and resources, and then take actions to solve the problem, and always evaluate your results. So when you have a problem, try and ensure you actually solve it so that your problems don't keep piling. The problems keep piling, you end up with stress, and we say too much stress can make you break. There's also something called anger management. You'll find that bottled and poorly expressed anger is an enemy of well-being. So when you're annoyed, count up to 10 before you raise the concern. Somebody has annoyed you, you can count Baraton 1, Baraton 2, Baraton 3. By the time you're getting to Baraton 10, part of the anger has dispelled. And most of the time when you're raising your concern, raise it when calm. Normally we say in Kiswahili, hasira, hasara. So try and raise concerns when you're calm. Take time out. If something has annoyed you, instead of fighting back or talking back badly, try and walk out for a while to dispel the anger, and then come back and sort out the issue. Use the I statement. You can imagine if somebody has annoyed you and you start telling them, you're stupid, it ends up bringing more conflicts. But if I want to say, you're stupid, but instead I say, I can't say I'm stupid, So try and use the I statements so that you don't bring more problems, and seek professional help when I know help is available. I know there's a guiding and counseling team in this school. There are very many psychologists around. And then there's something called positive thinking. So your thinking determines your feelings and your behavior. So you need to identify your negative thinking, like for example, overgeneralization or jumping into conclusions, and then replace it with healthier thinking. So there's something called an attitude of gratitude aids your altitude. So let's always think positive. I've done an exam, it has not gone well. I can work harder. Next time I can make up on it. I've asked a girl out, she has refused, it's okay. There are other girls around. Sindio? Maybe that one was not the one you're supposed to go out with. So positive thinking. And then school activities you're required to undertake in a timetable, and try and finishing at least one activity at a time. You have very many assignments, you can list them down. You say, let me tackle this one first. When I finish, let me hand it in, and then I move to my next activity. And then recognize pleasant feelings and sense of achievement after doing the assignments. And you need to balance between your school responsibilities, your leisure activities to achieve satisfaction and fulfillment. So as I conclude, I'd like to say there is no health without mental health. That saying was coined by WHO. There is no health without mental health. And anyone can suffer mental illness. And the major hindrance to seeking help is stigma. It's okay not to be okay. So be concerned about your mental wellness and that of your neighbor. And just know that help is available. So just don't sit there, reach out and talk. So it's okay not to be okay. So we'd like to appreciate all the people who came up with this presentation and ourselves as the presenters. So thank you. We can still go back to taking questions. Maybe some 5-10 minutes before we break. We were supposed to end at 12. So any other questions?
I'm waiting to see hands, but before the hands come up, sinisema mimi ni mwalimu. She has told us 5 or 6 things. Which ones do you remember of the 5, 6? Number 1? Mkianzia ya kwanza ndio mtakumbuka ya mwisho. Ya kwanza ilikuwa self-awareness. Sindio? Self-awareness, number 1. Ya pili? Assertiveness. I see you are good students. Ya tatu? Self-care. Kuna mtu alikra, mama aliandika, kulikuwa na self-care, number 3. The 4th one? Now you can positive thinking, yeah? The 5th one? Behavioral activation. So how you are arranging your things. Then social support. Hizo ni rahisi kukumbuka as ways of coping. I'm waiting for questions. And as we do that, I just want to say that we'll be here for the rest of the day. Purity was to tell us about that. Let her tell us.
Thank you, Doc and presenters. So I think the organizing committee had set up a place for us. So we will, if you have any personal or individual concerns, mtakuja kutuona at our respective places. Is it a tent or atatueleza exactly where it is? Utakuja, if you have any personal, individual, group concern, utakuja kutuona huko. We will do screening and then we will refer you to the correct treatment ama care. Sawa sawa? Yes, na tumesema it is okay not to be okay. First, you have to know your overall well-being vile uko, so that you know when you are developing symptoms for a mental condition. Sawa sawa? So if you are not okay, kindly see us. If you're going through something, come and see us. Sawa sawa? Also care about your neighbor. If your neighbor is not well, mnaweza kuja pamoja. Okay? Okay, so please kindly tell us penye tutaenda.
Okay, the team will be at the Jeremic Hospital under the Madam's Lois office. There are rooms up there, the second floor.
Sawa sawa, mnajua kwenye huko, kwenye iko, si ndio? Tutapatana huko. Any more questions? Ama hiyo ni itakuwa personal? Personal? Sawa sawa, we are expecting large numbers. Tumekuja kama tumejihami pia. Sawa sawa. Oh yeah, tutakuwa from today paka Friday. Sawa sawa. So ukifika uone iko queue, but kama ni emergency we are going to handle. Sawa sawa. Let us see you there. Okay. I think I'll hand over the program. Ama kuna mtu bado ana jambo. Sawa sawa, I'll hand over and then tutaendelea.
Say something. By the counseling office, we have rooms upstairs. So there'll be one room. When you come upstairs, we will direct you by the counseling office, just beside it. Then there is also another room. Once you come to Jeremic second floor, you'll be directed. Thank you.
To emphasize on that, it will be both consultation, mental health consultation, psychiatry consultation, and counseling. Okay.
Let's rise for a word of prayer. Our Father and our God, our King and our Creator, we give you glory this morning for having led us throughout the whole session of mental health education. My Father, our prayer this morning is that if there is any one of us here who is depressed, let him or her find a source of comfort in you. And we also request in a mighty way, my Father, that you use our facilitators to assist us in all our endeavors here in campus. Now we dedicate this day unto your able hands. Take charge and take lead, for this is our prayer in the mighty name of Jesus. Amen.
And to take him at his